Welcome to the Growing Grass Open House. We hope you're staying healthy and connected and finding moments of joy during this wild time of year. And again, apologize for any of those connection mishaps as we're working through some Zoom links. If you do hear from others, trying to join, just let us know in the chat and we'll try to alleviate anybody's challenges to access this, but we will record it and hopefully have other opportunities. I will encourage you, if you're joining, to please use the chat and introduce yourself in the chat. Your name and location would be great. A state is just fine. We're place-based people, so we really like to know where people call home or where they're currently have their feet residing. So we're going to use an open chat function here because we really want to hear from you, but we do ask you to be respectful and patient. We'll hope to answer questions towards the end of our hour. But do use the chat to lift up points you hear that resonate, or if you have curiosities or questions, put them in the chat and we'll look to get to them towards the end. So my name is Anna Clausen. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for Growing Grass. And I'm really excited to be here with you today with our team and our partners to share more. Just a bit about the purpose is we have a report that we want to share, of course, that informs what Growing Grass has been up to for the last year, but this is really an opportunity to connect and to understand what our project is and who our partners are and the work and efforts that are underway to create higher value and less waste in the beef and bison byproduct supply chain for American farmers and rural communities. A bit about the flow, we will hear from about the origin of growing grass first, and then we have an opportunity to hear from some of our project partners across the supply chain before we also then will dig into a bit more about what we've been up to this last year, where this project takes place across the country, what we're excited about for 2025. So with that, I love seeing the chat fill here to the side where we want to know who's here. And so just a little snippet of getting to know each other. Please keep filling in the chat with your location. And we have just a couple polling questions to let everybody kind of see who's present. So I'd love to pass it over to Dee to give us 2 polling questions. The first is, which best describes you as far as where you find yourself in the industry across the supply chain? And you can select all that apply of this long, beautiful list. Take another few seconds. Dee will be able to see sort of when we think we're getting most of our responses in. Make sure you hit submit when you think you've identified all your identities. It might be different tomorrow than they are today.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you all. Can folks see that?
Awesome. I can, yeah. What a great diverse group of people. It's great. This is what we feel like for Growing Grass really makes this project work, is perspectives from all parts of the supply chain and from all different parts of the world. One more chat, one more poll question. When Dee's ready. What are your favorite ways to interact with meat processing byproducts? Again, I think we can choose as many as resonate for you. Maybe you might even read some and be surprised of a new way that you haven't yet engaged with a beef or bison byproduct. And when you think you found them, just make sure you hit submit. Excited to see what the top winner is here. Awesome. I guess if I was a betting person, I would have put something down on pets, so that makes me feel like I'm onto something. and wearing them on their feet. Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. It's good to get a little glimpse. I know sometimes Zoom can feel really impersonal. We wish we could all be in a room together and engaging, but that makes us all feel like we know a little bit more about who's here. And without further ado, I'd love to pass it over to Jim. Jim Klenchman is our Growing Grass Project Administrator to kick us off and give us some overview of the origin of growing grass.
Thanks, Anna. Really appreciate it, and appreciate all of you coming and joining us today to learn about the project. Growing grass as a project at its core is really about how to regain and grow the value and use of materials that are increasingly becoming a waste and a cost in much of livestock production and meat processing in the US. About this, what am I talking about here? I'm talking about the hides, the organs, the bones, the fats, and all the other byproducts that are left over when meat is processed. You can see here, they make up around half of the animal total, and they result in a lot of really good things. But depending on where you process your livestock, these products can represent a value or a cost today in the US. At the big meat plants, these products still fetch $200 or more a head per animal in the commodity markets for all the different fats, bones, all the pieces. But for the smaller and medium-sized plants that serve a lot of the US ranchers, local meat companies, and communities, these products now cost on average $15 a head or more in disposal fees, thanks to reduced collection of byproducts and the infrastructure out in the country and lower market value for these materials. That is a real problem, and it's something that my family, with a history of raising cattle that we sold to grass-fed meat companies and direct to consumers, saw ourselves when we got our processing bills. But we also saw at the same time that the market was willing to pay more for our meat based on how we raised and grazed those animals. So we figured the same should be true for byproducts. So my brother Mark and I started a company called Other Half Processing to make that a reality. And we went to work. Originally, with me and Mark in my old pickup hauling a U-Haul trailer full of hides to a tannery in Wisconsin. We were setting about to grow a new leather supply chain that starts from the soil up. And we were able to do this thanks to demand from market partners like Timberland at first, but later other companies like Ralph Lauren, Coach, UGG, and more. These are companies that wanted to support and get leather from cattle that were raised regeneratively with acknowledged benefits to the soil, to the environment, to the animals themselves, and the producer's profitability. And they were importantly willing to pay more for that leather. But to build a supply chain, we had to start back at the soil. Like we said, we had to start with partners that we would pay premiums to, the ranchers and the local meat companies. Where before, this was a cost, these projects become a cost, we were figuring out ways to get them a premium for them and for those processors, like Lawrence Meats in Cannon Falls, Yosemite Valley Beef in California, Marksbury in Kentucky. These are the partners we worked with, and we're proud to work with to start building traceability of hides from ranch to tannery and into the shoes, boots, bags, and other products they were making. But part of this market was being able to prove the regenerative grazing claims that these market partners wanted to make and that helped them to pay a higher price for the leather. So to do that, we worked with Timberland and Pure Strategies to create a new verification system, something we called the Generalized Regenerative Agriculture Sourcing Specification, or GRAS. By identifying the key regenerative grazing systems criteria and info companies wanted, you can see a lot of them here. They're things you understand around biodiversity, animal welfare, soil health, grazing, fair prices for producers. And then working with existing regenerative, grass-fed, and other related certifications, like the ones shown here, that farmers and ranchers were already using. GRAS's equivalency approach meant that we could provide producers with a lot more options around getting verified for these byproduct markets, while at the same time expanding their market access for meat, all while providing companies who buy these products with one set of uniform claims under GRAS. So using GRAS, our growing national network of producers and processors, we were able to launch a regenerative hide and leather market in a way that got real added value back to the producers and processors instead of being a cost and a source of waste. But barriers continue to exist around the lack of enough verified supply, processing collection capacity, and getting the market really developed, and more, all these things that slowed down the growth of this new byproduct sector. So a couple of years ago, when USDA rolled out the Climate Smart Commodity commodity program, we saw an opportunity to get the resources and expertise and the supply chain partnering needed to solve some of the problems that have been limiting byproduct value and use from regenerative livestock, and to do that at a national level. We turned for help in applying for the grant to the American Sustainable Business Institute, a national nonprofit partner aligned goals and a mission to work with business organizations and companies to promote a just, sustainable, stakeholder-led economy. Working with them and a national network of producers, processors, and market partners, along with researchers and other experts, we secured a grant to fund growing grass. And you can see the URLs here to go into more information for each organization. Growing grass gave us the opportunity to expand the earlier work we started across the country, with much of the funding going directly to producers and processors. The overall goal of the project is to grow grass as a verification system and a marketplace for all interested businesses that want to help grow both the supply and sales of beef and bison byproducts in ways that benefit the US farmer, rancher, meat processors, and the environment. So while our focus is the buying and selling of materials, the reality is this grant and the work we've been doing from the beginning in supply chain is really a growing network of people and organizations all focused on making more value where there was waste. So Anna, I'm going to hand it over to you to introduce some of the people who are part of our community who have been helping make this happen from the beginning. So thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Dee, if you want to go to the next slide, I know it's not going to be enough time to take this all in because they're logos and they get small, but you can at least see that it's the breadth and depth of our team's expertise that really ensures that we can reach and collaborate with ranchers and farmers and processors and brands and experts. And this has been what's just vital to what we think is building back the supply chain, getting everybody here, moving it forward at the same time together. So we're really excited to invite a few of our partners across the supply chain to actually share directly from their perspective what the growing grass opportunity brings to them as producers, as aggregators, as processors, as brands and companies, and beyond. So I'm going to kick us off to Todd Churchill, and Todd's a real leader in the space of regenerative agriculture. Founder and CEO of one of the first grass-fed beef brands, a social entrepreneur and a passionate advocate. As a founder of Thousand Hills cattle company, really pioneering over 100% grass-fed beef brand. I've always seen Todd as this visionary. He builds a great team. He leads fast startup growth, and actually also a master with numbers. So Todd's also sought after for his accounting, his finance, his strategy, and marketing. But the thing I want to lift up here is Todd is also just one of the practical farm boys. And really, this work is rooted, I think, in what doesn't change is this core reason of why this work matters, doing this for rural economies. And he's adamant, as I am, that the vitality of our communities that we love will disappear if we don't solve our processing and supply chain issues. So Todd, really happy to pitch it to you and actually just ask if you can share how growing grass has been solving challenges with aggregators and processors and what you see its potential.
That's great. I wish my wife and kids could have heard that intro. That would have been, I guess it is recorded, so I could play it for them, I guess. But thank you very much. This is a passion of mine. We need to find ways to reduce the barriers for ranchers that want to sell for ranchers whose strategy to win in agriculture is to move closer to the consumer. Most people in agriculture believe the only way to succeed is to get bigger or to sell out. And there's alternatives to that. One of the best alternatives is to move closer to the consumer, because then you get to qualify for a bigger share of the consumer spend. But moving closer to the consumer means that you have to do things differently. And the way I envision it is like a slot machine. In order to win in a slot machine, you got to have all three spinning dials line up with the same thing. And we have three slots in the business of creating value for inedibles. So if I'm a rancher and I bring an animal to a processor, that processor is going to break that animal down and put everything that's edible that USDA says I can resell as human edible ingredients in a box, and I'm going to pick that up at the front door. Everything else is going to leave out the back door, and it's going to be an inedible ingredient that has very specific restrictions about what can be done with it and where it can go. For a small plant, as Jim alluded to, it costs money to make those inedibles go away. You have to pay someone. So I, as the rancher, inevitably pay because I get charged more for processing than a large plant would charge, because I have to pay for the cost of making those inedibles go away. For the largest plants in the country, those inedibles are worth over $200 per head instead of a cost of $30 per head. So I'm already behind by $230 per head in my desire to sell my product directly to my neighbors and friends and maybe some local restaurants and retailers. In order to close that gap, we have to be able to find buyers for these inedible ingredients. We have to have enough supply from ranchers, so that the buyers are the first wheel. The third wheel is the ranchers. They're the ones that are supplying the raw materials that turn into an inedible ingredient that can be used by a buyer. And the third piece is the processors have to be willing to create a standard and abide by a specification for the buyer. So, for example, if I bring one animal in, that animal is killed and the head's cut off, and we have a carcass hanging on a hook, and we have a hide that's been removed. That one hide has no value because there's not a single buyer that's interested in buying one single hide that has come straight off an animal and hasn't been further processed in some way to prepare that hide for ultimately for the tanning process. So in order to create that, in order to get value for that hide, instead of having it be a cost that has to be landfilled, the processor has to do something extra. They have to salt it. They have to roll it up. They have to be able to put 40 hides into one container within no more than 48 hours after kill and have that picked up and delivered someplace that they can then be further processed. So understanding those specifications is the third wheel. And we have buyers that want to buy, and we have ranchers that want to produce. But where we usually fall short is having a processor that's willing and capable and has the equipment necessary to take the inedibles, further process them into a form that the buyer is willing to accept and receive, and can deliver the quantity that's necessary to justify the transportation cost. So that is one of the key things that growing grass is designed to do, is to bring those three parties together and start the conversation. And the buyer says, no, I gotta have a container load. I gotta have 180 carcasses, or I'm not interested in any of them. And we're at that table and we say, well, what would it take to get you to start with 40? Can we ship you half containers to get this started? We understand that maybe you won't be able to pay as much, but we've all got to collaborate somehow in order to create the demand that's coming for products that are coming out of these small scale plants that have the desirable marketing claims and environmental claims that you as a buyer say you want. And if you want it, you're going to have to figure out how to collaborate and do a little brainstorming about how to change your spec in the near term, so that we can prove to the ranchers and the processors that there's a real market for this if we all invest the time and energy necessary to create inedible ingredients that meet the buyer's specs for them to be able to do what they want to do with them in the future, whether that's selling Tripus pet food, whether it's a hide that's going to end up on a pair of Timberland boots, or whether it's pharmaceutical grade organs that are used for transplants and all kinds of other pharmaceutical uses. That in order to make all that happen, somebody has to make the effort to go and start these conversations, sit down at the table with the buyers, with the processors, and go out into the ranching marketplace and encourage more ranchers to raise more cattle and bison that are raised in a way that allow the buyer to have confidence that they're actually getting products that end up in shoes and cosmetics and all kinds of other places that they can make meaningful marketing claims about.
Thank you, Todd. And thank you for also demonstrating what I think is so important, is the confidence in what you're doing and why you're doing it. Todd, is there any, if it's all right, can I move on to the market parts? Are there any pieces you wanted to wrap up with?
No, this is good.
I think it is, it's integral, and there's a reason why I think we started sort of with your perspective. Todd alluded to this, but in order to build that market for climate smart animal byproducts, those needs and requirements of those potential buyers need to be identified, and communication channels have to be opened. So as the Director of Sustainability and Innovation at the Pet Sustainability Coalition, PSC, Allison leads transformative initiatives that actually help the pet industry tackle critical environmental challenges, such as reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but also transitions to sustainable packaging and fostering this responsible ingredient sourcing, which we're talking about here. So Allison Reeser has been deep in conversation with pet food brands this past year, problem solving and uncovering those unique challenges and needs for byproducts in the pet food sector. We're really excited. It's an exciting part of the byproducts that we're looking at. Excited to have Allison on as a partner in this work, and really wanted to queue up for you, Allison, if you could share with all of us what market partners, specifically for your market, are looking forward to with the Growing Grass Project.
Sure. Thank you for that intro, Anna. I also was really excited in the little survey that we had at the beginning to see that we have some folks here from the pet industry. So welcome. I'm excited to see you, as well as everyone else along the whole initiative, and that even more people understand that pet really has this opportunity to use these byproducts. So just to reiterate, our role in this grant is really to convene the pet industry sort of in two ways. We have been doing a lot of learning from the procurement side of things. So understanding what would it take for pet food brands to really integrate these ingredients. And I think the next frontier in 2025 is really leaning into the marketing side to understand, what does the end consumer want? What do pet owners want to hear about regenerative agriculture and these byproducts? But I think the top three things that I wanted to share for this open house were, first, that there is a lot of alignment in the pet industry on regenerative agriculture. What I'm hearing from the companies that I'm working with are that most of these companies, they get it. They understand the potential fit of regenerative agriculture with the existing sustainability goals that they already have. And not even just sustainability goals, just business goals as well. So there's a recognition that regenerative practices really have the potential to create positive impact in so many different ways, whether it's soil health or animal welfare or any number of things that might already align with what they're trying to do in their supply chain. So that was my first key takeaway, and really positive feelings about the potential of really making this real in the pet industry. That being said, of course, I've also learned some challenges that we can overcome together to really connect the dots in the supply chain. The first one is around scale. The great thing is that we've been talking to some medium and some large pet food companies. And I think at this point, the hurdle to getting them connected with these ingredients is just that we can't supply everything that they need. So just the quantity is a challenge that we get to explore. And the other thing that's coming up in the pet industry is just nutritional consistency. That's super important for a lot of pet food brands, just to make sure that the pets are getting exactly what they need. So really having more data around what is the nutritional profile of regenerative byproducts that we're talking about. So I think that's a data question, which we are working on, and I'm very excited to see that. My third bullet here is just coming back to collaborating and learning, and seeing that in action has been awesome. We're actively working with several companies to send them samples and gather data and really collect insights about how can we integrate regenerative beef and bison byproducts into their products. And just to reiterate a little bit how the grant works is that the grant funding is able to support the producers with the fair pricing, but then more on the market side, it's also able to offer these ingredients to brands at a competitive price. I've heard it described as priming the pump of the supply chain, which kind of comes back to the whole scalability. Like once this pump gets primed, then we can reach the scalable quantity that we'll need for some brands. So I think looking forward, I'm super excited to continue this work. And as I mentioned, really leaning into the marketing side of that. So I'll be meeting with pet companies to understand what do their consumers want to know about regenerative ingredients and what kind of data do we want to pass along from the farm all the way to the consumer. So we did a lot of learning in 2024 and excited to turn that into more action in 2025.
Thanks, Allison.
Thank you.
Excited as well. I'm in the pump. Our third project partner that we want to invite to share some of the perspective coming specifically from producers is Holly Stoltz. Holly's a coveted project partner who hails from her ranch in Montana, but brings to the rest of the world, actually, a really vast and grounded experience and knowledge in regenerative ag. As she's the supply chain director for Western Sustainability Exchange. Holly, you are a trusted source for sharing innovative challenges, technologies, illuminating value-added opportunities, just building and weaving this resilient community of over 6,000 people in your network committed to regenerative agriculture in Montana and beyond. So Holly, you act as this bridge between ranchers and emerging markets, and you create these avenues for peer-to-peer networks, as I mentioned. I just would love to cue up why you are eager to know, or what excites you in your network about the growing grass opportunity and how it's helping producers.
Thanks, Anna. I will say, Allison, I have a bit of good news. Westpaw, who is a partner of ours in Montana, I know they're a part of the association you're with. They just launched a regenerative dog treat line in June, and they were named the People magazine's top pet product of the year, or one of the pet products of the year. So woohoo, we're getting some good press on that. So that's awesome. But yeah, and that just kind of dovetails into what we're trying to do in Montana is work with companies like Westpaw, the other half processors, and other smaller processors to try to figure out how we can scale and how we can make it work in Montana. And if anybody knows anything about Montana, our infrastructure is very rudimentary. That's probably about the best word I can think of, because we don't have the big processing plants, and we have, up until 3 years ago, had very few USDA certified plants, and so that is our first hurdle. But our next hurdle is to, just like Jim said, try to figure out how we can get less waste going to the landfills. And that's a big problem in Montana. We do have several ranches starting to compost, which is awesome, but we just have way too much waste. And the logistics are hard in Montana, but that is what we're here for as far as an organization. And I guess I should maybe go back a little bit and say, I do work for Western Sustainability Exchange. We are a nonprofit based in Livingston, Montana. We service the whole Western region. We basically, in a nutshell, help ranchers improve their grazing management. And we know that we can't just tell them how to do stuff. We have to show them that there is a market opportunity and advancement for not only for their families currently, but to be able to bring their grandchildren back to the ranch. And so you have to be able to show a monetary value to improving their grazing, not just the fact that they're going to increase their carrying capacity and the quality of their grass. And so we have just began an initiative trying to help ranchers find market opportunities. And so that is where we feel like we can really, grass can really help us as an organization try to find those partners, use their network. The other part is the big question that we get from our producers is, what certifications do we need? How do we go about doing it? What is it going to get us? And I do believe that this network will really help us answer those questions to our ranchers. And then on the other side, I am a rancher myself, and just a really quick sideline story about our ranch is we farmed and ranched up by Glacier National Park for 98 years, sold our ranch to the Blackfeet tribe and moved down by Billings, which would be about south central Montana. So 3 years ago, we totally changed our whole marketing strategy with our ranch. And so what we're really hopeful as a producer with grass is that it will help us try to navigate where our long-term solutions need to be. Is it cow-calf? Is it a certification? Is it selling through the commodities? Is it, a different class of animals? And so I really do think that being a part of this project as a producer will help us navigate that a little better and hopefully give us the information that we need to, like, if we decide that the byproduct industry is where it needs to be, then we need to figure out how, as a ranch, we can finish our beef in Montana, which is another problem, as many of you probably could understand. So yeah, I just feel like this program and this network of people is going to really help our producers, our state, me personally as a producer. So yeah, I'm just really tickled and excited to work with everybody.
Thanks, Holly. The feelings are very mutual from our team. And thanks everyone continuing to put some good questions into the chat. We really wanted to feature some of these perspectives first, but we are hopefully going to answer some of those questions either in the next few slides or in our Q&A, because we're going to pass to Anna Strauss, our Deputy Director for the Growing Grass Initiative, for a look at our project approach, what our reach is, some of the milestones met to date, and what's coming up next in 2025.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anna and Holly and Allison and Todd. It's just really great to hear from everyone and this huge team. There's so much expertise just throughout the supply chain. And so there's obviously a lot to organize as a project. So I'm the Deputy Director with the Growing Grass Project, and I have the privilege of working with all of these wonderful folks and trying to coordinate and organize this work along with our wonderful admin team. So what you see here, our project approach, we created a fun graphic to try and break down the work into 6 different work streams. They're not perfect, they overlap, there are feedback loops, and those need to be constant to build a resilient supply chain. But here goes our attempt at kind of breaking down the work in a way that makes sense. So our attributes group, or our working group, really is focused on defining the environmental, social, and economic impacts of byproducts to get farmers, ranchers, processors, brands the right value for the work that they're putting in. So when you think of an attribute, think of grass-fed or animal welfare or biodiversity. These are kind of these specific claims or things that we're looking for with different products hitting the shelves. So in defining those attributes, that connects to collection, which Allison talked a lot about this. So collection is really focused on helping processors access, trace, collect, and sell verified grass supply. So really focusing in on, let's say a brand wants sushi grade tripe, which has been the talk of the town. Someone actually does want that. How are we going to help work with a processor to set up that workflow in their plant? Like Todd was talking about, get enough of that material, set it aside in a way that's appropriate, and then get it picked up and moved to where it needs to go next. So collection is really that like procurement and logistics piece. Marketplace readiness. This is our brand and market facing side efforts. So our project provides supports to brands in connecting with supply, making claims, marketing products, and storytelling. And what we found is that different brands want different things. So some brands might be really interested in making a specific claim, like animal welfare. Some really want to just tell the story. Like they don't necessarily even need data or numbers, but they want to talk about a farmer or rancher who is doing the right thing. And so our project can provide access to any and all of those things depending on what a brand is most interested in. The producer, the driver of the whole thing, production and supply, and Anna has done a great job in leading up a lot of those efforts in partnership with many other wonderful folks. this is just really focusing on making it easier for getting farmers and ranchers to plug into the grass supply chain. We are partnering with producers as a part of the grant to identify pain points in the supply chain. So the call is out there if you're a farmer or rancher and you're interested in getting involved, but maybe there's a couple of things that are stopping you. We want to hear from you, and we want to partner with you and pay you for your time in working on those solutions and providing real-time connections that will grow the supply of materials. Right now, supply is really one of the biggest constraints in the byproduct supply chain. So this area is just really key. The grass standard group, we talked a little bit about that. Excited to share more. I saw a good question in the chat. But this group is really focused on like the administration and the formalization of the grass standard. It started out meeting this need for brands who wanted the supply, and there's so much more depth and robust processes and procedures that we can put into place to really grow its legitimacy. So that's what the grass standard working group focuses on. And finally, our tools, our tool makers, our outfitters. That's kind of the informational and data backbone of the whole project. There's all of this information needed and exchanged from tracing materials and just organizing all of that to support the claims being made in the supply chain. It's really important to have secure and organized data systems to make it all happen. All right. Next slide, please, Dee. Awesome. So this is a map showing where we work. Our project is national in scope. Hawaii and Alaska are included. They're just not pictured. But these are our existing partnerships. In 2024, which was really our major first year of grant operation, these are the people that made it happen. And you can kind of see that there are these various hubs of activity around the country. And so that's really the philosophy I feel like of this project too, is plugging into those existing hubs and knowing that ranchers are not raising cattle to sell byproducts. There's already demand around grass-fed or regenerative beef or bison. And so how can we kind of plug into those existing movements and hubs and bring that added value for the byproducts to carry that through the supply chain? Next slide, please. Awesome. So for anyone who's already seen it, this is a screen grab from our by the numbers section of the 2024 annual report. I love this section. Also, shout out to Dee, our communications director, for putting this together. And I just wanted to lift up a couple of key numbers here. So number one, the supply chain partners engaged. Thrilled to have engaged so many folks in 2024. And Jim mentioned we did begin the grant work with a solid handful of brands that were already engaged. But this grant work has really allowed us to accelerate that engagement in 2024 with all of the offerings that we're able to put together. So some brands like Timberland, Coach, Range Revolution, UGG, and Ralph Lauren have regenerative leather products on the shelves right now. Encourage you to check them out. ISA Tantech has also been a really instrumental partner in making all of that happen. And we're still working with a lot of folks engaging with partners, like Allison mentioned, to see like what kind of specs do you need? How do we problem solve with you? And so there's really engagement kind of on a bunch of different levels with market partners, and we're excited to see more of that come to fruition. Another last piece on this I wanted to mention is producers engaged. So on the bottom right-hand corner, 33 survey screener responses. This report was created on December 23rd. I'm excited that this number has doubled since we published our report, and that's just through the networks of this team. We have not done our full public launch push yet. And so really grateful for all the time spent in 2024 laying the groundwork so that we were able to go slow to go fast with our producer enrollment. Next slide, please. So now I want to kind of build that bridge between what we accomplished in 2024 and what we are most excited for in 2025. So grass standard work, Jim talked a little bit about that, and we really laid the foundation for GRAS 1.1. Fun things like creating a documents library. Tara Ritter has done a great job on our team of getting everyone organized, and we're really excited to launch GRAS 1.1 as a public-facing standard in 2025. In addition to that, ideating for GRAS 2.0. So getting a little bit more refined in our attributes definitions, right? Grass-fed is great in North Carolina, where I live. There's a lot of grass over here, but it's a little bit more challenging out in the Mountain West. So how can we really dig deep into the attributes that make up grass and work with certifiers and all of that great stuff to create an even better GRAS 2.0. Processor engagement. We have 2 signed contracts through the Growing Grass Grant program that supports processors with labor and equipment costs. Back to what Todd was talking about again, you need to maybe have an extra guy on the floor who's cleaning the tripe or who's pulling the hides and making sure that that all happens. That's an added labor cost or maybe an added equipment cost for our processor. So how can we support in de-risking that? We are partnering with 2 processors right now. We are looking forward to expanding that, are already in talks with a 3rd, and hope to bring more folks on board and just to provide both that technical assistance and funding support for those pieces and processors willing to take that risk with us. A fun number of 17,000 hides shipped and 2,000 pounds of beef tripe in 2024. We're looking to grow that flow of materials in 2025. Maybe even some bison gelatin may enter the mix. Market engagement. We engaged a ton of supply chain partners, and now I'm really excited for some of those pieces to come to fruition. And so the brands that I listed with grass byproducts on the shelves at the moment, a lot of those had leather products. We're excited for more pet food, nutraceuticals, and other ingredients to be hitting the shelves in 2025. And finally, on producer recruitment, I talked a little bit about it, but we've connected with over 20 farmer and rancher networks this past year. We have 54 qualified farmers, ranchers, and herders signed up now, and that is gonna grow. There's no stopping us now. So with that, I will turn it back to Anna, who's been leading up those efforts, and tell us more.
Yeah, I'll just tell you with the quick excitement, we are at the point today of enrolling producers. We have spent very intentional time laying the groundwork so that we're not wasting the time of producers because they have other things to do. And we really want to figure out how to streamline and get them into our process. So we're enrolling producers, we're working with processors, we're working with market partners, really reducing that waste, making American made. This was just the graphic we wanted to show of just in the last weeks of where producers sign up, and we are just moving producers to the next round. Related to some questions in the chat, what that means is more opportunities for being able to cost share some of those certifications and audits. Yes, that's what some of the intent of our funds are, and to start connecting with local processors and that access to those markets. So our approach really is meant to build that access, but also do so while we're lowering barriers. And so in some of those cases, we're also taking input and learning what are your barriers. So the barriers are different across this country, which is why already just in our first, as we said, initial soft launch, just to see that our partners have helped us really have a pretty good breadth across 24 states. And we will reach all of them. That's our goal, and continue to expand it. It's not about the size of your operation. I mean, sometimes we often get approached by beef and bison producers like, well, am I too small? I mean, this is the part where you're often too small to do it on your own. So where we can aggregate and we can work together is what really excites us. Just to keep us moving, I'd love to move to the next slide and just do a really quick shout out before we can move to some Q&A of who inspires us. This work just moves forward based on the inspiration of the people on the ground doing the work. We could do 20 slides of this, but I just want to lift a few up that really resonated for us in 2024. Lawrence Meats, they're a full-service niche meat packing company in Cannon Falls, Minnesota that specializes in grass-fed meat processing. And we're just really inspired and grateful for their interest and leadership in being our first meat processing company to contract with Growing Grass. Catherine Bedell is a rancher and so much more, also part of our Growing Grass project. And she just has given so many contributions, inclusive of running her own ranch, being a sounding board for our growing grass certification, and an amazing spokesperson for the project. She's also launching a brand new processing facility in Colorado for her community, and we learned so much from her. Red Wing Shoe Company, family-owned business. For those of you not in Minnesota, actually you have an international reach, which is amazing. But being a Minnesotan, over 100 years of being a company here that has really been concerned about quality and longevity and with leather. And Red Wing Shoe hosted our first partner gathering, really sharing insight, perspectives, and letting us see the full supply chain and giving us access through the back door to see from hide to boot. And we're really grateful for that. It was very inspiring. FarmRaise is a farmer-friendly accounting software that we have contracted with and work that has made interfacing with our producers more effective and efficient, which is a goal of ours. They're very innovative, resourceful, very professional, and it's been amazing to have this group and to be partnered with them. And this is our payment platform. This is what we've been building and are currently now have live to offer payments and opportunities to cost share with producers as we build out the supply chain. And last, I wanted to lift up Sacred Storm. Sacred Storm Buffalo is a workforce development social enterprise dedicated to empowering communities through the art of meat processing. It's just so incredible. And to us, they're just this beacon of empowerment and education and this place where they're really fostering what it is to build culturally relevant food choices. So we're inspired by them, and I'm hopeful that there's any ways we can just support the efforts that they are just running full speed doing. And we're really excited to watch that take shape. And with that, I think I'll transition us just towards question and answer. I do head to our website. We're adding things almost weekly as far as ways to really understand across the whole supply chain. We are seeking partnerships. If you're a producer, we want to grow the supply chain with you by streamlining these regenerative verification processes and certifications and access. Processors, we're working to collect and trace more of those regenerative verified byproducts, and brands, we want to expand markets for hides, bones, organs, and more. So head to the website to find a way to reach us, and let's answer some questions. I know I just kind of laid it all out there. So team, if there's a question we want to start with, I'm happy for you to point me in that direction.
Yeah, there was one I wanted to lift up in the chat, and it may have been answered in the chat too, but I think just worth revisiting, from Anna Rose. How/where does GRAS stand with certifications? Is GRAS a formal certification that you would put a seal on your product labels? And would that need to be verified by USDA, FSIS if you have a GRAS claim?
Yeah, I can answer that. It's a good question. And I saw that we got Anna did some response there too. I think that we're still developing it. That's part of this whole project, right? To figure out how to best do it. But the intent was for it to be focused on byproducts, not the meat products at first, and not to be a new seal as much as something that you can use as verification or backing for regenerative marketing claims and language. So we're not trying to replace the seal. We talk about it often like how you see, verified by CCOF or some organic or other certifier. We see it more as that to support the language being the language you want to use as a business or as a company selling these products. So
keep the questions coming in the chat. I'll read off another one though, and Jim, you can answer and maybe I can add too. Also from Anna Rose was noting that one of our slides mentioned a low or no cost certification for producers. Does that mean that GRAS subsidizes producers to obtain their certification?
yeah, part of the project, the research we're doing with the project is to see, what we can do to increase market access and how much that helps producers, processors, this whole sector grow around verified byproducts. So a key part of our funding is helping producers, especially ones who haven't seen it as an opportunity yet from a market perspective, to get into some of these certifications and ones that are eligible under GRAS. So therefore, the goal is that we're helping you sell the whole animal at that point into a higher value space.
Thanks, Jim. Jim, up to you, and I'm happy to add to this as well. But the question here from Sarah of the status of the funding and if it's federal funds. And I'm happy to kick us off, or Jim, if you would like to.
No, I'm happy to. I mean, yes, this is the project, as I said, you know, we got the work started on its own with all the businesses and farm groups and meat companies and such and OHP, but it really grew based on the support we received through USDA and their Climate Smart Commodity Program. That is the core funding. And we're still moving forward with that work. It is the primary source, and we haven't received any instructions other than to continue work. So that's what we're doing with USDA, and we're hoping the funding continues to support this project.
And confirming too that this project is from 2024 to 2028. We kicked off in 2023. That was a lot of very fun administrative ground laying, but really the work began in 2024. So to answer that question as well. Are we missing any questions? I don't think we are. Please shout out if we missed anything.
I just have a quick question because I work with, networking is a huge part of our organization. Is there an opportunity, Anna or Jim, to or Anna, to have like a networking? So I'm just thinking, yeah, it's really hard to get products out of Montana, but are there other people that we could work together and try to figure out, opportunities in the byproduct through this group? Is that something that you guys have thought about?
I think it's very much the intention is that how do we connect and get the best learning from different areas? We know some of the plants we started work with, they know how to use everything. I mean, it's amazing how they get everything prepared and sold. Others don't have that knowledge or have risk aversion or something that's stopping them. So it starts at that level with processors and others. But yeah, our goal is to connect communities, whether it's through direct aggregation or just sharing best knowledge. How do we help everyone do this and wherever they are? And to be clear, we talk about aggregation and national collection with leather and stuff especially, but we know the real opportunities for most of this is local, with local pet food companies, with local ingredient companies and others. And so our goal is that this really supports small businesses all over the country, small, medium-sized, as well as large businesses around the country. But that has to be done by what you're talking about, Holly. We've got to figure out how to cooperate and work across, in some cases, regions, but certainly, between in our areas to figure out how we can get enough of this stuff together and work to get into these markets in the same way, these value-added markets.
Thanks, Holly. Great question. And I think we have one more, maybe to close this out. Are there any plans to freeze dry organs into powders to use for supplements?
It is definitely one of the growth areas we're seeing in this space. So absolutely. We know a lot of people don't, for different reasons, want to eat the organs, but we know the nutrient density and the nutritional value that can come from some of these materials. So there's definitely companies that we're talking to and working with who are trying to do just that exactly. But yeah, and we're open to others coming into that network and looking and working with these ingredients.
Fantastic. Great questions. This went way too fast. This was our first ever open house. I think it's a good reminder for us to pause and be like, you just do the work and pause and share the work. And as Jim mentioned earlier, to us, this work is all about relationships. You build a supply chain by relationships, just the way it's always been done. So we hope this is just the beginning of an invitation to continue to connect with us. If you're not already connected with us, we'll just keep going deeper. It's exciting, and we really hope that you'll stick around and grow with us, because that's where we're at. We're ready to really grow and build and connect and reconnect up and down the supply chain. So thanks for your enthusiasm. You're all here for, in some part, because you care about this too. You care about whether it's enthusiasm for hides, organs, bones, or rural economic vitality, or really just showing up to make things better so that we're utilizing everything that we have at our fingertips. We really appreciate you here, and we will send a follow-up email with all the ways to stay connected. Anyone on my team have any final blessings or words you would like to share?
I'd just like to thank everyone for coming and for the ongoing interest and focus in this. It only, like Anna said, it only works together. So we welcome you all. To any who isn't part of the project, please join us if you can. Look at the website, see how to participate in your way. But together we can reduce the waste and increase the value in this for all the partners we're talking about. So really appreciate you coming and being part of this today.
Thank you all.
Thanks for
Thank
inviting me.
you. Thanks for being here, Todd. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Allison. Thanks to everyone.